Good afternoon and welcome to the Public Service Commission of South Carolina. It is Thursday, April 20th. I'm sorry, April 20th. I was keying on 2 p.m. At 2 p.m., and we are here for a special commission business meeting. Let's take a roll call of commissioners. With us virtually, we have Commissioner Caston, Commissioner Thomas, and Commissioner Irvin. Present in the hearing room, we have Commissioner Justin Williams, Vice Chair Powers, Commissioner Carolee Williams, and Chair Belser. Before we begin, would you join me for a moment of silent reflection? Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Scarborough.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, and good afternoon, Vice Chair Powers and Commissioners. I remind the Commission that the next regularly scheduled meeting is Thursday, April 27th, 2023 at 2 p.m., 1 week from today.
Thank you.
Today we have 6 items on the utilities agenda for the special business meeting. Item number 1 is in docket number 2022-256E, which concerns the final disposition of Duke Energy Progress LLC's petition for review and approval of storm recovery principal cost and an accounting order pursuant to SC Code annotated section 58-27-11110.
Thank you, Mr. Scarborough. Commissioners, we've heard agenda item 1 is identified by Mr. Scarborough. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion.
Commissioner Caston, and if you can get close to your microphone, it's a little hard to hear you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank
Can
you.
you hear me well now?
That's better. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. I move that the commission approve the stipulation entered into by Duke Energy Progress, DEP, South Carolina Office of Regulatory Staff, South Carolina Department of Consumer Affairs, and Nucor Steel, South Carolina. The stipulation provided, among other things, for a debt return only for the carrying costs on the deferred balances of storm costs. I further move that the commission approve the following recommendations and adjustments regarding storm cost as provided by the ORS that were not part of the stipulation. Number 1, DEP shall subtract Maker's depreciation, ADIT, from the company's quantifications of the capital cost rate base for Hurricanes Matthew and Florence, and correct bonus depreciation to account for the update provided to ORS during this proceeding. Number 2, DEP's deferred carrying cost approved in this proceeding shall be calculated on the capital cost rate base and regulatory asset based on the prior month balances of each of these components. The non-incremental storm restoration cost associated with work performed by native contractors in the amount of $1.166 million, as identified by ORS witness Collin, along with all deferred carrying costs associated with these non-incremental storm restoration costs, are hereby disallowed. In sum, the total amount of principal cost approved is $170.63 million, which consists of deferred incremental O&M of $139.639 million, deferred capital cost, including carrying charges associated with Hurricanes Matthew and Florence of $3.622 million, accrued carrying cost of $27.37 million, which reflects estimated carrying cost as of February 2024. The company may request permission in future proceedings to update the deferred carrying cost component to account for any difference in carrying costs resulting from DEP's estimated date of issuance of February 2024 and the actual date of issuance. Such true-up shall be based on the method of calculating carrying cost approved in the upcoming order reflecting this motion. Additionally, I move to grant DEP's request for an accounting order to defer costs associated with storms Izzy and Jasper. The cost components, including carrying cost, shall be in accordance with the methodology specified in this motion and the order. Any cost identified by ORS associated with invoice errors or non-incremental cost shall not be deferred for Izzy and Jasper. Finally, I move that DEP, to the extent it's not already doing so, shall implement the process improvements, pre-planning, and resource management processes recommended by ORS witnesses Frutal and Collin. I so move.
Thank you, Commissioner Caston. Commissioners, we've heard the motion from Commissioner Caston. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to a roll call vote, beginning with Commissioner Caston,
Aye.
Commissioner Irvin,
Aye.
Commissioner Thomas,
Aye.
Commissioner Justin Williams,
Aye.
Vice Chair Powers,
Aye.
Commissioner Carol Lee Williams.
I vote aye.
The chair votes aye. The motion carries.
Item number 2 is in docket number 2023-2E, which involves the final disposition of Dominion Energy South Carolina Incorporated's annual review of base rates for fuel costs.
Commissioners, with regard to agenda item 2 as identified by Mr. Scarborough, is there a motion?
Madam Chair, fellow commissioners, I have a motion.
Commissioner Justin Williams is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, fellow commissioners, I move that the commission requests that Dominion Energy South Carolina, the Office of Regulatory Staff, South Carolina Energy Users Committee, review the stipulation again to determine if there's anything else that they can agree to that will reduce the sting of this proposed rate increase to ratepayers. I further move that the commission set a deadline to answer this request on Monday, April 24th at 5 p.m. So moved. And at the appropriate time, Madam Chair, I'd like to make a few comments and observations.
Thank you, Commissioner Williams. Commissioners, we've heard the motion from Commissioner Williams. We'll take comments beginning with Commissioner Justin Williams.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, fellow commissioners, the law in this case requires the following. The commission shall disallow recovery of any fuel costs that it finds without just cause to be the result of failure of the utility to make every reasonable effort to minimize fuel costs, or any decision of the utility resulting in unreasonable fuel costs, given due regard to reliability of service, economical generational mix, generating experience of comparable facilities, and minimization of the total cost of providing service. What stands out to me about this law is finding without just cause that the result of the utility to make every reasonable effort to minimize costs. Failure of the utility to make every reasonable effort to minimize costs. One of the issues in this case has been the hedging program or the lack thereof. And I know Commissioner Irvin asked a lot of questions about the hedging program, not only in this proceeding, but even in last year's proceeding. And I know that a 2012 order has been referenced several times. And the way I understand the referencing of the 2012 order is that the commission ordered that the company suspend the hedging program. The commission ordered that the company suspend the hedging program. And I found that interesting, considering the fact that I don't know if we have a natural gas market expert on the commission staff that regularly reviews and watches the market to determine whether or not the market is stable or the market is volatile. And so it caused me to look back at that order, and this order number 2012-39, and there's a paragraph I would like to read. And the paragraph reads, the commission also finds that the company conducted its hedging program during the review period prudently and consistent with approvals granted in orders number 2006-679 and 2007-595 as modified by order number 2008-546. However, we find reasonable the parties' settlement positions. We find reasonable the parties' settlement position. And position one is the company's hedging program should be suspended at this time in light of the current relative stability in gas markets and prices as a result of new domestic shale gas production. And number two, the SCE&G hedging program should be suspended effective as of the date of service of this order. Thereafter, the company shall not acquire any new financial hedges for its natural gas supplies until further directive or order of the commission. And I read that and I have some opinions on that I'll share a little bit later. But I did a little bit more research and went to the proposed order to see if the proposed order read anything like the order, the final order. And in the proposed order, the same paragraph reads a little something like this. The commission also finds that the company conducted its hedging program during the review period prudently and consistent with approvals granted in orders number 2006-679 and 2007-595 as modified by order number 2008-546. However, we agree with the position of both SCE&G and ORS that the company's hedging program should be suspended at the time in light of the current relative stability in gas markets and prices as a result of domestic shale gas production. We therefore find the SCE&G hedging program should be suspended effective as the date of service of this order upon SCE&G. Thereafter, the company shall not acquire any financial hedges for its natural gas supplies until further directive or order of this commission. And so then I went back to the settlement agreement, and in the settlement agreement, it was suggested the same, that the hedging program should be suspended. Here's why that's perplexing to me. Natural gas markets, as we know, are very volatile to date, and it started trending that way a while back. And if you read this order or interpret this order to mean that the company, in this case Dominion Energy, can't participate in hedging until the commission orders them to do so or allows them to do so, it creates a unique set of circumstances in that, for me, it seems that the commission would be required to petition the company to participate in a hedging program. And I can't understand how and when we would do that. Now, I do understand that the company agreed to study the matter, and I think they're going to do that in 2023. But what about this review period? I'm concerned that there seems to be an opportunity, or at least there was an opportunity, to address the volatility in the natural gas market with a hedging program, but it seems as if the company is standing on this order as a reason for them not to do so. And I'm not saying that's wrong, I'm not saying that's right. It's just a head scratcher, considering the fact that the company and the Office of Regulatory Staff suggested that the hedging program be suspended, and the commission agreed to do so. So who bore the responsibility? Who should have the burden to bring back to the commission's attention that the natural gas market is not as stable now or last year or several years ago as it was back in 2011? That's a head scratcher for me. And so, yeah, we're going to study the matter, but the prices are high now. We've had several increases, and it seems as if hedging is no longer as an effective tool as it was before natural gas prices were stable back in 2011, 2012 timeframe. I bring that up because I think as decision makers, we need to be careful, fellow commissioners, when we agree to stipulations and we agree to go forward on recommendations if we don't fully understand how they will impact our ratepayers in the future. Because right now, the way I understand it, Dominion Energy South Carolina does not have a hedging program because we told them, or at least the way they interpret this order, is as the commission telling them that they should suspend the program based on the recommendation they made along with ORS. They're standing on that we ordered that they should suspend it and that they should not have a hedging program until we order so. But again, when I go through that line of thinking and thinking through the issues, I just don't know when the commission would petition or request the utility to have a hedging program. I know that the parties can agree to things that we can't order them to do. In fact, I remember during a rate case in the midst of COVID, we entered something called a regulatory pause, and it allowed the parties to get together and negotiate an outcome that was compassionate and considerate of the difficult times that our country was in and that ratepayers were in. And so I'm just wondering, it's been some time since the stipulation has been presented before us. I know when I went back and reviewed the transcript and looked at all this stuff, you know, I had some thoughts that maybe are a little different than they were during the time of the hearing. I will at least just like to give the company and ORS and energy users an opportunity to review the stipulation to see if there's anything else that they can do to relieve the sting of this rate increase. Now, maybe they can't. Maybe they come back and say, that's the deal is the deal. That's the best that we can do. And if so, we vote on it and we move on. But I would be second guessing myself if I didn't, at the very least, offer the parties the opportunity to review that stipulation and determine whether or not there's anything else that they can do. That's my motion, Madam Chair, fellow commissioners, and that's some of my reason and rationale behind it. I'm open to any
Madam
questions.
Chair? Madam Chair, I have some questions for Commissioner Williams.
Commissioner Urban?
Thank you. Commissioner Williams, thank you so much for doing this background research on this important issue. And thank you for your motion, and I am going to support your motion for the following reasons. As you pointed out, some decade plus ago, the parties that entered into that order, that stipulation, were ORS and SCE&G. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And so that was long before Dominion Energy South Carolina even came to our state. And as a matter of law, do you agree with me that Dominion was not a party to that docket at the time that order was entered?
Well,
It was SCE&G, right?
at that time, I think I understand where you're coming from, and I agree with you to the extent that in 2012, Dominion Energy was not operating in South Carolina, and it was SCE&G. I think considering the merger, there is an argument that they took over the footprint and are subject to the benefit of any order SCE&G entered into, or that was applicable to SCE&G before the merger. But I understand your point.
Yeah, and so I guess the legal issue there is a successor in interest bound by a decades-old order ordering a prior party to do certain things. So that probably needs to be looked at. But would you also agree with me that when we talked about a hedging program a couple of years ago, before natural gas prices spiked over 100%, I had a discussion on the record in the hearing room with Dominion Energy's attorneys, and I asked them at that time to please consider reinstating a hedging program. Do you recall that?
I do recall the conversation. Yes, sir.
And they decided not to do that. And my concern then and my concern now is that, as you pointed out, the world has changed. We now have a very volatile commodity environment affected by world events beyond anybody's control in this room. And we don't know what will happen next year or the following year when we talk about natural gas prices. Would you agree with that?
I would agree. Yes, sir. We don't know.
We don't know. And so what my contention then and still my idea now is that it's really like an insurance policy. We don't expect Dominion Energy to really make money on a hedging program. But the benefit of a hedging program is to smooth out the volatile changes in commodity prices like we saw last year when natural gas prices spiked over 100% in a 12-month period. And as a result of that, we now find ourselves revisiting the whole problem of how is it fair, just, and equitable to resolve the issue that it was reasonably foreseeable, in my view, as I stated then, I'll reiterate now, it's reasonably foreseeable that commodity prices will go up and down. And in today's environment, with Russia's invasion of Ukraine, China's saber rattling, threatening to invade Taiwan, North Korea developing supersonic ballistic missiles that may be able to reach the United States, who knows what will happen in the next several years with commodity prices. You know, we have to plan for the future. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
And so here's my experience. You know, you and Chair Belser and I have been working on these issues now for going on 5 years. I signed up for a 4-year term. I'm about to complete year 5 because the federal court throughout the districts for congressional elections is still not resolved. But my point is this: we have to learn from past experience. And as a result of Dominion's failure or refusal to adopt a hedging program, we now are looking at a requested rate increase to cover hundreds of millions of dollars in fuel costs that could have been avoided had a hedging program been in effect. Would you agree with that?
I would agree that if a hedging program would have been in effect, we would be in a different set of circumstances, more likely than not.
We sure would. And to make matters worse, the average ratepayer in South Carolina has suffered greatly from the effects of COVID, the effects of inflation. It can continue to suffer from inflation. And in fact, utility rates in South Carolina are now, according to the recent ratings, the 4th highest in the nation. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Well, it's true. And so here's my concern. I think that, you know, we probably, from a legal standpoint, are not in a strong position to order a hedging program. And there are a number of reasons for that. One is the original fuel statute adopted by General Assembly years ago was really drafted by investor-owned utilities. And I don't blame them. You know, they want to be reimbursed for their cost, whatever they are. And, you know, I can understand why that law was passed. But here's the problem. During the past year and a half, the ratepayers of Dominion Energy have faced not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 5 rate increases just in a year and a half, which total 16.99%, right at 17%. Rate increases just in an 18-month period. Now, how much more can ratepayers take, particularly those on fixed incomes, seniors, people that are struggling to get by, working 2 jobs, people that have chronic health conditions, disabilities, they face child care, some of them face student loan debt, they face higher grocery prices and gasoline prices. How much more can ratepayers take without some relief? What do you think?
You know, that's a hard question to answer. All I can tell you is that Commissioner Urban, when we came onto the commission in 2018, there were wanted posters of commissioners on the walls. There were protests during our commission hearings, and it seems to me that if you push a person far enough, there's no telling what they would do.
Well, and that's concerning, you know, and we don't need a ratepayer rebellion in our state. That's not what I'm calling for by any stretch. What we need to do is what Tom Farrell, the former CEO of Dominion Energy, did when we went through the debacle with the failure of the so-called nuclear plant expansion that failed miserably and cost the ratepayers dearly. As you recall, he stood in right here in this hearing room and negotiated a stipulated settlement with us on the record. And you know what he demonstrated? He knew that his primary duty was to shareholders, and he upheld that duty. He was a wonderful CEO, but he also was a man of compassion. He had a big heart. He contributed to multiple charities. He was on the board at the University of Virginia where he graduated. He was a man of character, conviction, and fairness. And I think that looking back on my 5 years on the commission, the thing that impressed me most, two things. When we are at our best when we work together for the common good. And there are two examples of that, and you were involved in both of them. One example is what I just mentioned when Tom Farrell worked with us to resolve the SCNG debacle, to work out the terms of the purchase by Dominion. The other chance that you well remember, because you were chairman at the time, you sought out a young lawyer that represented the co-ops, and we had millions of dollars of delinquent ratepayer bills pending on one side of the table. We had federal funds that had been appropriated to reduce and relieve those debts that have been driven up by electric energy prices. And you had the wisdom to say, let's get together, let's work through this. And to Dominion's credit, Duke's credit, co-op's credit, they formed a task force and they worked it out. And you know what happened? It became a model for the country, not just South Carolina. We led the way, thanks to your leadership, to adopt a template to solve this problem for every United States territory and state. And it became a model. And I am so proud of that accomplishment. It would have been possible without your leadership. But what my point is, we are at our best when we work together collaboratively. We're not enemies. Dominion is a good company. They're good corporate citizens. They have dedicated employees, and they do a lot of charitable work in our communities, and I commend them for that. But we've got to work through these issues, and I believe that we can do it. So I'm fully supportive of your motion, and I'll tell you something else. You're looking for solutions, and so am I. I've been doing some research. Our neighboring state in Georgia has set an example. Georgia Power, which covers the entire state of Georgia, I think with the exception of 5 counties. I think they have over 100 counties. Georgia Power implemented a senior citizen bill credit for those over age 65 who qualified based on low income formula. And it hasn't really cost them a lot of money, but what it has done for Georgia senior citizens is allowed them to go online and fill out an application. It's very simple, one-page application, and they can apply for that bill credit. And if they are United States citizens, head of household, and a head of household income does not exceed $29,000, they get a bill credit for $36 on their bill. Why can't we do that in South Carolina for our senior citizens? Because as you know, and when we go to these night hearings, we always hear this, that many of our elderly are on fixed incomes. They're getting the minimum maybe on Social Security. There may have only been one breadwinner in the home. And so they're trying to scrape by in this inflationary economy on $20-something thousand a year. Can you imagine how difficult that must be? If we show some compassion and work together, why can't South Carolina have a senior citizens bill credit for those over age 65? I believe it's possible. And I don't think it would require a statutory change to do it. I think that Dominion could do it voluntarily and show good faith and say, okay, we know there's a disproportionate impact on the poor. So let's carve out some relief for those who are struggling. It's an easy fix. And so I would join you in encouraging Dominion and ORS to do what our fellow citizens across the river in Georgia have already done and at least give our seniors some relief. That would be a great outcome in my view, but I appreciate your motion and I fully support it. Thank you.
Commissioners, any further questions or comments?
Madam Chair.
Vice Chair Powers, may I ask if Commissioner Williams would consider a friendly amendment before we go forward?
Certainly.
I will always consider a friendly amendment from my chair.
Commissioner Williams, I would just suggest that where you requested Dominion, ORS, and the South Carolina Energy Users Committee to review the stipulation, there were other parties to this docket. While not signatories to the stipulation, the other parties did not oppose. So I would just ask, should we include Southern SACE and CCL, Coastal Conservation League, and Southern Alliance for Clean Energy?
I would welcome their inclusion. I just did not want to. I did not want to assume or lump them into the stipulating parties when they were not signatories. But I welcome
I just
that.
think they need to be included in any discussion, just for clarity, since they are parties to the docket.
Yes, ma'am. I welcome that.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, may I be heard on that point?
Commissioner Urban?
Briefly, thank you. I think that's an excellent suggestion. And I don't know what would prevent, if we're going to have a discussion and kind of a mediated settlement, hopefully, what would prevent the consumer advocate from intervening or participating?
Consumer
present
Advocate
the
was not a
ERP.
party to the docket.
Okay. Is it too late for them to intervene?
We're through with the hearing. We're on the downslope. It is pretty late.
Well, if there was a kind of a settlement conference, was there anything under law that prevent them from participating if they asked and the other parties consented?
I'm not aware of anything. It's just that no petition to intervene has been filed by them, and they have not been admitted to the party. Now, whether or not as a party, whether or not the other parties would object, I don't know.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Williams. And Vice Chair Powers, I'm sorry I interrupted you. Vice Chair Powers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner Williams, concerning your motion, I have recently, just this weekend, attended a national conference, and there were commissioners from, I would say, 45 out of the 50 states there. And we're all under different legislative control or legislative abilities as far as policy making and different things. But there were a couple of states that things came up that had adopted, or the commission seemed to have more influence as far as hedging policies, and had put in hedging policies about 2 years ago. And now they're considered genius because of the timing of when their hedging programs came in and saved millions and millions and millions of dollars. This is such an important issue, and following up on what Judge Irvin has said, we're asking them to make a rather major reconsideration or look at this problem, and we're now making sure that all parties are involved. And your motion gives them until Monday at 5 o'clock. Tomorrow's Friday, then we have Saturday and Sunday. Do you feel that that's going to be adequate time to take a good look, or as I would be concerned, would they come back Monday and just say no further agreement or change? If we extended it too far, then all we're doing is creating more and more expenses through the attorneys and other parties involved, which of course is always paid by the ratepayer. But I would ask you about the time frame, just thinking it through.
I definitely welcome that question, and it's a good question that should be asked. I think Monday is sufficient because, number one, we heard the stipulation several weeks ago, and I trust the lawyers that presented the stipulation to us. They have demonstrated professionalism and competence every time they've appeared before me, and being in their shoes, not in this hearing room, but in others, there are always times where you have opportunity to think about the settlement or the stipulation you entered into, and some of the things, Commissioner Powers, the Vice Powers, I should say, some of the things you shared, and also some of the things you did not share. And so maybe there's opportunity for them to share more. Obviously, this is voluntary, and now that you asked me that question, I think it's a good time for me to say, we could vote on this thing today and move on with business as normal. But at some point, I think it's important for us to slow down and say, yeah, we may be following the law, but is that good enough? And I'm not saying to break the law, but there's nothing preventing us from giving the parties a little bit more time to come together to see if there's something more that they can do, considering the nature of this case. I think there's more than enough time for them to get together to see if there's more that can be done. And if more can't be done, we vote as soon as the chair schedules a special business meeting to address the matter. But I wouldn't want to go further than Monday because they either are willing to make some concessions or they're not.
Well, and I appreciate that answer. We certainly are not in a position and don't want to be in a position to try and manage or micromanage how the utility operates. But, and I agree with, my first reaction was it just seems that every time that they come back, it's a raise, and it's more money for the ratepayers to have to pay. And that in itself makes some of this, what we do, almost exhausting in a way, because, we're supposed to be just and reasonable. We don't represent the ratepayers. I know that ORS and other agencies have certain obligations, just as Commissioner Irvin mentioned, the Department of Consumer Affairs. And I would hope that these agencies that come to us with these agreements would just, as you say, look at these things more careful. And I certainly will support your motion, and would love to have one hearing where prices are going down instead of up. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Commissioner Carolee Williams.
Thank you, Chair Belzer, and thank you, Commissioner Williams. I'm going to be supporting your motion, but I'm supporting it in part because of the quick time frame. I believe that we have been given a really hard decision to make. I believe that the parties involved did their best and put certain things on the record, and that's what we have to make a decision on. But I do, especially in the volatile, changing environment, I do like the opportunity, the window, for additional findings, additional recommendations to come forward. We all know this, but just for anybody listening in, as Commissioner Williams reflected on the statute, we have to determine if every reasonable effort has been taken to minimize cost. And we have a record that we make that decision on. And in this particular case, there was a stipulation, and it actually two stipulations with the mid-year and the final. And if my records are right from staff, they really, the parties entering into those stipulations did a really admirable, from what I understand, but the reality is that we don't know what went into that stipulation. But numbers wise, when you total the reduction from the mid-year and from this current time frame, they stipulated about a $92.5 million reduction over what was requested in those two cases. And I'm thankful that is not part of our discussion, that we're starting from that point. So I do thank the parties that brought those stipulations to us, and I thank and encourage them to perhaps bring more to us in this window of time that's been offered. To Commissioner Irvin's point with regard to senior citizens and other states, I wanted to just raise, and I'm not sure of the appropriate manner to do this, but I wanted to just remind everyone that as a part of the Dominion rate case, the docket number, now I'm looking at 2022E, something strikes me as kind of off from that, but the bottom line is I'm talking about the Dominion rate case that we heard in 2021. It included in it stipulation number 21, which talked about a process that they would bring together stakeholders to look at a process to examine an electricity affordability program for Dominion Energy, South Carolina's low-income customers, and address the need for legislation to implement such a program. The electricity affordability program may provide for an affordable payment program that provides a discount to eligible customers on their monthly bills or caps their monthly bills based on income, an arrearage crediting or arrearage management program. And there's more, but that gives you a glimpse of what was contemplated almost 2 years ago. I looked, and they did open a docket. There have been 3 meetings that have been held, but at the appropriate time, I'd like for there to be an addition to a future agenda where we can request that Dominion Energy come report to us on the efforts that have taken place in that regard. We certainly had no idea in 2021 what kind of fuel increases specifically we're going to be looking at in the coming years. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Williams. Commissioner Justin Williams, I neglected when I was asking about parties being afforded opportunity to be included in the discussion you've proposed. I've neglected CMC Steel. They also were not a signatory to the stipulation, but if it could just be the parties to the docket so that everybody has a chance. Parties may decide not to participate in any discussions, but I think it just needs to be open to all the parties in the docket.
I agree.
Thank you, sir.
Madam Chair, I agree with you as well, and that's an excellent point. If I could just follow up briefly. You know, at some point in time, as our electric utility rates continue to increase in South Carolina compared to our neighboring states, my concern is it's going to hurt economic development efforts. And I commend Governor Henry McMaster and his leadership for developing a real robust program through Department of Commerce to seek out new industry. But at some point in time, when those new industries do their calculations, one of the problems that we're going to be facing is increased rates for industrial customers. And as you know from the stipulation, their rates are going up even more than residential rates. And the same is true for retail customers. So if we're going to continue to create jobs in South Carolina on a competitive basis, we're competing with other states that have lower electric utility rates. it will impact our efforts. And that in turn will impact everyone in our state, including state government, because we won't have the benefit of those revenues, those tax revenues. The counties won't have the benefit of property tax revenues. The cities won't have the benefit of increased business activity. It's a ripple effect. And so this is really more than just residential rates. We're talking about how do we continue to attract new industry? And you know, I think the State Chamber of Commerce might want to intervene in the future because they're advocates for business community, and businesses are getting hit hard. They're getting hit hard by these rate increases as well. So that's another piece of the puzzle. Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Caston?
my opinion of all of this is varied. I certainly, at least my knowledge of all the commissioners, I don't for a moment think any lack compassion, sympathy, empathy. I do. But I also believe in its human nature, it's easy to, after the game is played, to sit back and play armchair quarterback. There's been many things said, and I won't address all of those, but my opinion is, based on at least my recollection of various and sundry hearings we've had, one I've heard something about rates, you know, the highest rates, fourth highest, I don't know. That, at least in the hearings I've participated in, that's not been my understanding. There's a difference between rates and bills and consumptions. So that might be something we're looking at in the future, but I'm not sure that's the case. But whether that is or not here, my opinion is that in the hearing we had, well, going back to November, it was asked, because I asked it, pointed it out, ask everything. Okay, now as I understand it, stipulation in November simply reduced the request. It did not eliminate the request. And that come April, which is now, that we're simply kicking the can down the road and we will have to address this issue later. And all responded yes, as I understand it. And relative to whether hedging is good, bad, indifferent versus what they do, I don't know. I know I've heard in the hearings, multiple hearings, that hedging doesn't guarantee a lower rate. It may fix one, but it doesn't lower it. It doesn't guarantee us lower. So I don't know what the right answer is there, but I do know that we've asked, and Dominion has said they're going to evaluate that. You know, to say that hedging is the answer, I don't believe is accurate. I don't know whether it is written. May well be. But to dictate that they do this or that, I do not think is particularly prudent without information and knowledge. That said, during this past hearing, the questions were asked, and we had opportunity to ask any questions, as many as we wanted to. My personal opinion is the record reflects that all did what they could do. And I think the law dictates, that being the case, we approve. So my preference would be that we make the decision now and move on. That said, I'm not opposed to Commissioner Jay Williams' motion to ask parties if there's anything they think they could do or want to do by Monday. But I get it. I understand And what other states do, I think we can learn from. That's a wonderful thing. But my interest is not how I feel or my emotion, but what does the record say? And what does the law say? And in my view, all these things, I'm not debating the merits. I'm not arguing that we don't feel that way, or it wouldn't be wonderful if it was that way. But it is what it is right now. And that's the fact. So I'm saying all that to say that I will support Commissioner Williams' motion, but my preference would be to vote now because I think we should. That's all I have to say, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Caston. Commissioners, anything further?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Williams?
Madam Chair, I want to take this time to make sure that, and I think this was clearly communicated, but just in case it wasn't, I want to make sure that the parties know, especially the parties that I named in the initial motion, understand that this is not about finger pointing or building a straw man to scapegoat. This is about trying to get to some solutions. I honestly don't know the answer to who should have brought to the commission's attention, or if the commission in and of itself should have brought to the utilities' attention the fact that maybe the natural gas market had changed from stability in 2011, 2012 to trending towards instability and outright volatility in 2020, 21, and 22. I mean, that's a real question. And it begs another question: how many other orders are out there that the commission, that the chair has signed, not you, but chairs over the course of history, that our regulated utilities are interpreting as prohibiting or preventing them from taking certain actions that may be prudent or wise that could result in possible benefit to ratepayers. If it's our responsibility, then that's fine. It's on us. We need to be accountable for it. But I'm not so sure. And so with this case and with cases in the future, we need to have a clear understanding of roles and responsibilities so that we can ensure that the best possible outcomes are reached. So I just wanted to make sure that that was clear. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Jay Williams. I want to just clarify something here. I know that there's been a reference to the 2012-39, I think it's 39 order that where the commission suspended the hedging program. That hedging program was on the distribution company side. That was done in a PGA proceeding. And this is 2023. In 2022, in the PGA proceeding, my recollection is that Dominion agreed, and I can't remember if it was a settlement or not, or stipulation, agreed to look at implementing or reinstituting that hedging program on the LDC side, and do whatever studies and talk to whoever parties and bring it back to the commission in this year's 2023 PGA. We then had the, and I think that order went out in December of 22 on that PGA case, subject to check. We then had the Dominion mid-period adjustment for fuel costs. The order in that case also went out in December of 2022, right at the end of the month, is my recollection. And in that case, which was the mid-period review for fuel costs for electric generation, the Dominion also agreed to bring back or to include a study of a hedging program and bring it back in the 2024 annual fuel proceeding. I have it in my mind, and I hadn't had a chance to go back and look at the transcript yet, but I have it in my mind that there was some discussion that they couldn't bring that as early as this April 2023 proceeding. So Dominion has indicated that they're doing this. Now, I did a lot of thinking over the last couple of days on this, and the reason I bring up the 2012 order being in the PGA docket, I don't recall, and I have a recollection of, I think it was Witness Jackson, if not this year, maybe last year, making the statement that they've never had a hedging program on the electric generation side, that the hedging program was on the distribution company side, the gas local distribution company side. It's my recollection, even from testimony this year from both Ms. Jackson and or Witness Thompson, I believe, that Dominion uses economic dispatch as the catalyst. They run the models, figure out what they're going to need, and then go to the next most economical generation unit. I'm not opposed, and the company's agreed to look at a hedging program, but I just think that we need to be clear. It's my recollection that they haven't had a hedging program on the electric generation side. That's subject to check. But I just want to be clear on what we're looking at there when we're talking about hedging.
Madam Chair, I appreciate you making that clarification. And you know, one of the things that can be so questionable about eyewitness testimony, two people see the same thing and say something different about what they saw. And what I took away from some of these hearings is that the reason there's not a hedging program is because of that commission order. I would not disagree that has probably played into it. Okay.
That because that order, it suspended the program and directed at that time SCE&G on the LDC side that they were not to, and I'm paraphrasing here, but the gist, as I recall, is that they were not to bring or to engage in financial hedging without further order of the commission. Does that sound correct?
That's what I remember taking away from that, which raises the question. We are constrained here at the commission. So if there's an order out there that is interpreted as you can't move forward with this particular tool, if you want to call it that, hedging, until further order of the commission, then it seems like it's the commission's responsibility to monitor the market to determine when natural gas rates or prices are moving from stability to instability. And I just don't think we have the firepower to do that.
I don't think we have the firepower, and I think it was probably outside of our statutory responsibilities.
Well,
so, I mean, just at first blush, for sure. But anyway, I just want to make that's my understanding after some further reading, and I just want to make that clarification. But I do appreciate the parties in the 2022 PGA and the I keep calling it mid-year, but mid-period fuel adjustment case for the concessions that they are looking at that. I don't think a hedging program is just something you can say, we're going to start a hedging program next week. I think that there's got to be some groundwork laid and expertise obtained to be able to do some of that. But I don't know. That's what we're expecting the company to bring back to us. Commissioner Irvin.
Yes, ma'am. I appreciate your observations, and that's a good history lesson in terms of where we are. I think staff is informed some of us in briefings that Piedmont Natural Gas has successfully used a hedging program here in South Carolina over the years to level off the peaks in spikes in commodity pricing. And again, it's not a perfect solution. Nobody knows. In fact, when I predicted 2.5, 3 years ago that we needed a hedging program because of potential spikes in natural gas pricing. I had no idea that we'd see 110% spike year to year. So, nobody knows. It's a market. It's volatile. It changes from day to day, hour to hour, minute to minute. And because of that volatility, I think it's a useful tool to consider to take out the spikes in cost. Because here we sit, and as you heard from our last hearing on March the 30th, we had two lay witnesses. They were last virtual witnesses to testify. And there was a gentleman, I don't remember his name, but I asked him, I said, do you think it's unreasonable for an investor-owned utility not to plan for potential spikes in commodity pricing? And his answer was, yes, sir, I do believe it was unreasonable because it was foreseeable that it could happen. And I thought it was foreseeable too. I still think so. And so it's just one of the tools in the toolbox. It's not going to solve all our problems, but it would have solved the problem we're looking at today had they implemented a hedging program when I asked them to 2 years ago, 3 years ago now. Now, who knows what the future holds? But we have to use every tool in the toolbox to try and stabilize our rates. I think we all agree on that. We don't want to see these big numbers come in year to year. And now we've got a 17% increase in rates over an 18-month period for one utility. I mean, how much more can these poor ratepayers expect to take? Those on fixed incomes, those are seniors scraping by to pay rent, buy gas and groceries. They're being hit hard by all this. And I'm honestly disappointed that the consumer advocate was not asked to intervene in this case, because this is an issue for our poorest residents. And we have to show some compassion when people are struggling. And I'm just looking for solutions, but I appreciate everyone's input, and thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Irvin. Commissioners, we have a motion on the floor that's been amended. Does anybody need it repeated? Friendly amendment, just to open it up to all the parties in the docket. So, hearing nothing further, we'll proceed to a roll call vote, beginning with Commissioner Justin Williams.
Aye.
Vice Chair Powers.
Aye.
Commissioner Carol Lee Williams.
Aye.
Commissioner Caston.
Aye.
Commissioner Irvin.
Aye.
Commissioner Thomas.
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Motion carries.
Item number 3 appears in docket number 2023-42E. This item deals with the final disposition of Dominion Energy South Carolina Incorporated's annual update on its demand-side management programs and petition to update the rate rider.
With regard to agenda item 3, do I hear a motion?
Chair Belzer?
Commissioner Carol Lee Williams.
Thank you. I move that the Commission approve Dominion Energy South Carolina Incorporated's annual update on its demand-side management programs and its petition to update its rider, which involves a rate decrease. The DSM rider charges per customer class effective for bills rendered on and after the first billing cycle of May 2023 are as follows. Residential shall be 0.221 cents per kilowatt hour. Small general service shall be 0.585 cents per kilowatt hour. Medium general service shall be 0.164 cents per kilowatt hour. Large general service shall be 0.067 cents per kilowatt hour. This update involves a rate decrease ranging from 6% to 54%, depending upon the class. As part of the update, 2 new programs were added to the company's DSM portfolio, the Residential Multifamily Program and the Municipal LED Lighting Program. The updated DSM rate rider was developed by Dominion in accordance with terms and conditions set forth in Commission Orders Number 2010-472, 2013-826, and 2019-880. Order Number 2021-295 required Dominion Energy South Carolina to revisit the methodology employed to generate the projected program savings to ensure better alignment with the steps to align forecasted energy savings with actual energy savings, including retaining a third-party program evaluator to complete a market assessment to provide updated DSM model inputs. I move that Dominion Energy continue this work to ensure that the forecasting tools utilized in future company filings are grounded in the company's actual energy savings achieved through its programs. I also move that Dominion Energy continue to make the necessary modifications to its home energy checkup program to ensure cost effectiveness in future filings. In addition, I move that the Commission require Dominion Energy to convene all stakeholders regarding its opt-out program for large commercial and industrial customers to consider various options, including but not limited to updating the opt-out program, recommending requirements for opting out, recording collective results of independent programs for large commercial and industrial customers who choose to opt out, collecting and sharing best management practices and results among the large and industrial customers who choose to opt out, and any other new initiatives that encourage energy efficiency and demand-side management and collect impact data, which results in lessening the peak load and increases Dominion's energy efficiency levels. Dominion shall report back its recommendations no later than December 15th, 2023. I so move.
Thank you, Commissioner Williams. Commissioners, we've heard the motion from Commissioner Carol Lee Williams. Is there any discussion?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Caston?
I appreciate Commissioner Williams' motion, and I will be supporting it, but thinking about the DSM energy efficiency, I would note that in Dominion's upcoming 2023 IRP, in their 2023 DSM potential study report, was a very informative read, and I look forward to learning more as we proceed to the 2023 IRP. And that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Caston. Commissioners, are there any further comments? Hearing none, we'll proceed to a roll call vote, beginning with Commissioner Carol Lee Williams.
Aye.
Commissioner Caston.
Aye.
Commissioner Irvin.
Aye.
Commissioner Thomas.
Aye.
Commissioner Justin Williams.
Aye.
Vice Chair Powers.
Aye.
And I vote aye. The motion carries.
Item number 4 is in docket numbers 2023-38E and 2023-39E. This item concerns a motion from Pine Gate Renewables LLC and Catalina Solar LLC to consolidate these two dockets.
With regard to agenda item 4, as identified by Mr. Scarborough, is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion.
Vice Chair Powers.
Thank you. Dockets number 2023-38-E and 2023-39-E each contain a question of law common to both dockets. That common issue of law is whether 75 megawatts capacity threshold triggering the certification requirements of the Utility Facility Siting and Environmental Protection Act, South Carolina Code Section 5833-10 should be interpreted as 75 megawatts direct current DC or 75 megawatts alternating current AC. Docket number 2023-39E potentially contains factual issues which might be narrowed or resolved upon the determination of the issue of law. To address these dockets in the most efficient manner, I move that the Commission consolidate the dockets for briefing and oral arguments on the legal issue common to both dockets. That issue being whether 75 megawatts capacity threshold triggering the certification requirements of the Siting Act should be interpreted as 75 megawatts DC or 75 megawatts AC. Number two, I would ask that the clerk's office set a briefing schedule for legal briefs to be filed on the legal issue of whether the 75 megawatt threshold triggering the certification requirements of the Siting Act should be interpreted as 75 megawatts DC or 75 megawatts AC. The clerk's office will set a hearing date for these dockets. On that date, oral arguments will first be held on the legal issue of whether the 75 megawatts threshold triggering the certification requirements of the Siting Act should be interpreted as 75 megawatts DC or 75 megawatts AC. Immediately following oral arguments on the legal issue common to both dockets, the Commission will conduct a hearing to receive testimony and evidence related to the factual issues in docket 2023-39-E. Further, I move that a status conference with the parties be convened by the clerk's office and other assigned commission staff for these dockets to determine a date for oral arguments and hearing when considering the commission's calendars and the parties' calendars. So moved.
Thank you, Vice Chair Powers. Commissioners, we've heard the motion from Vice Chair Powers. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to a roll call vote, beginning with Vice Chair Powers.
I vote aye.
Commissioner Carolee Williams,
Aye.
Commissioner Caston,
Aye.
Commissioner Irvin,
Aye.
Commissioner Thomas,
Aye.
Commissioner Justin Williams,
Aye.
and I vote aye. The motion carries.
Item number 5 appears in docket numbers 2023-1E and 2023-3E, which is a request from Duke Energy Progress LLC and Duke Energy Carolinas LLC for approval to maintain their currently approved fuel rates for one additional month.
Vice Chair Powers, I would like to turn the gavel over to you for the next two items.
Thank you, Vice Chair.
And
Commissioners,
I have a motion.
Commissioners, you've heard item 5 as read by Mr. Scarborough. I will entertain your motion, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I move the commission grant the request of Duke Energy Progress LLC and Duke Energy Carolinas LLC for a 1-month extension of the company's current fuel factors and distributed energy resource program per account charges established by order numbers 2022-433 and 2022-655, pending the Commission's disposition of the 2023 fuel proceedings and docket numbers 2023-1-E and 2023-3-E. The extension requested by the companies seeks to continue the same 2022 rates for an additional or 13th month in order for the companies to catch up to the new Commission-established procedural schedules related to fuel proceedings filed with the Commission in accordance with South Carolina Code Annotated Section 58-27-865. I further move that to the extent recovery of fuel expenses and factors by DEC and DEP for one additional month at the current 2022 established rates results in any over or under recovery, that DEC and DEP shall seek true up in the company's respective next fuel proceeding. I so move.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioners, you've heard the motion by our chairman. Is there any further discussion on item 5?
Vice Chair Powers.
You have the floor.
I just want to explain the need for this motion, this request and motion. Our commission staff conducted workshops with a lot of utilities regarding procedural schedules for the next few years. And as we have seen, fuel dockets, the time between the hearing, the issuance of the order, and the effective date of those fuel cost new rates, whether it increases or decreases, is a very short period of time. And so I was one person that was asking the chief clerk to please ask the electrical utilities, could we have some more time? We need to build in some more time between the time of the hearing and getting a decision and an order out. And Duke Energy Progress and Duke Energy Carolinas have acquiesced to move out the implementation date 1 month. And so that necessitates their request for an additional month to continue the currently approved fuel factor until we can get that order out and the new rates go into effect.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll move to a roll call vote, starting with Chair Belser.
I vote aye.
Commissioner Caston,
I vote aye.
Commissioner Thomas,
Aye.
Commissioner Irvin,
Aye.
Commissioner J. Williams,
Aye.
Commissioner C. Williams,
Aye.
and I vote aye. Motion carries.
Item number 6 involves a request from the chair asking the Office of Regulatory Staff to conduct an investigation of Duke Energy Progress LLC concerning news reports of incorrectly calculated bills and the issuance of bill credits related to the incorrectly calculated bills.
Having heard item 6 as read by Mr. Scarborough, is there a motion?
Vice Chair Powers.
You have the floor, Chair.
Thank you. Commissioners, I ask that this item be added to the agenda just by watching the nightly news on WLTX and a story that appeared regarding some confusing bill credits that were appearing on some electrical bills. And so I ask that this item be added. And to that end, I make the following motion. I move the Commission request the Office of Regulatory Staff investigate and examine the issues of incorrectly calculated bills and issuance of bill credits recently reported in the media concerning Duke Energy Progress LLC. While the Commission is prohibited from directing how the ORS conducts an investigation or examination, I respectfully request the ORS consider addressing, at a minimum, the following areas: the reason for the incorrectly calculated bills, the length of time incorrect bills were issued, how were the errors in billing discovered, why the errors in billing were not identified earlier, what actions have been implemented to both correct the incorrect billing and to prevent further incorrect billings, the number of customers impacted, how long it will take to resolve the issue, whether ORS was notified of the incorrect billings, and other areas which ORS deems relevant. So move.
Having heard the motion by Chair Belser, is there any further discussion?
Vice Chairman Powers.
Commissioner J. Williams.
Madam Chair, your motion makes me smile because I love a proactive body that seeks to address and identify issues and hopefully point them to the right entity to resolve those issues, or at least look into them to provide some answers. We hear so many times in our public hearings that folks have issues, and it seems so strange to me that they have to wait until a rate increase to address us to discuss issues that they haven't had help with during the course of time between a rate case. So I applaud your watching of the nightly news and being attentive to what's going on in our community, and I'm very happy to support your motion. Thank you for your leadership.
Thank you, Commissioner Williams. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we will move to a roll call vote, starting with Chair Belser.
I vote aye.
Commissioner Caston,
Aye.
Commissioner Thomas,
Aye.
Commissioner Irvin,
Aye.
Commissioner J. Williams,
Aye.
Commissioner C. Williams,
Aye.
and I vote aye. The motion carries. I pass it back to you, Chair Belser.
Thank you, Vice Chair Powers. Mr. Scarborough, is there anything further?
No, ma'am, Madam Chair and Commissioners, this concludes all business noticed before the Commission today.
Thank you, Mr. Scarborough. I note that our regularly scheduled business meeting will be next Thursday, April 27th at 2 p.m. However, I do anticipate that we will need to have a special business meeting between Monday afternoon or either Tuesday or Wednesday. I do not know a date and time yet, but one will be posted as soon as we can ascertain an appropriate time. And with that, thank you all, and this meeting is adjourned.